Hi, this is On Imagination. Welcome to the Ethical Asshole, and I am your host, the Salt Bitch. So we are going to dive into the 4 groups of self-management. I am stoked over this one. This is something it's been in the back of my mind where I noticed it, the mathematical pattern a while ago. Okay, let's do the math. I noticed this around the 8th ethic of the I of I. And I just shifted I just did an expansion shift. And I did that yesterday, like the last 2-3 days. And I'm now in the 47th level of consciousness. When I did that, whole massive amounts of unknowns came to me, integrated knowns came together. And I went, that's what this is. So it was a massive amounts of comprehension, new components of unknown defined chaos all over the place. Woohoo. And one of the things that came together was, I finally have the words and articulation for this little thing. So the 12 ethics can be broken down into 4 management groups. The first 3 groups, which is your trust group, is self-management. This is what you are building when you are learning how to manage the self. You are dealing with your courage, your vulnerability. You are learning how to manage your self-nourishment, your needs. And then in the second ethic, you are learning how to manage that vulnerability with courage, self-authority. You are also learning how to preserve your own power of choice, as well as your identity. This is huge with the second ethic. This is all about your identity. And also your right to reject. That all comes in with the second ethic. And with that, you also lead into self-regulation, the third ethic, which gives you trust. When you get all 3 of these together, they make up trust. Self-regulation is when you are learning about your desires. That's what you get with that second ethic, is what you want. First ethic is what you need. Third ethic is what you are doing when you are balancing that first and that second ethic together. In addition, the first ethic is also the first stage of learning. Observation, silent observation. And that second ethic is all about the second stage of learning, which is being open to receive, which is your silent observation and listening. The third ethic is when you are bringing them all together and now you are taking action and you are applying the skill development that you need in order to learn. And it's learning how to do skill development, getting to a certain point of regulation, stopping, and then taking care of yourself, first ethic, and then going back to the learning environment, second ethic, where you are learning, observing, mimicking. This is where you do mimic, mirror, repetition, response. And then you shift back over into self-regulation, where you are applying it with a hands-on skill. That's what we do at the third ethic. At the fourth ethic, 4th, 5th, and 6th, you enter into social management. This is where you are now looking at how you interact with a person one-on-one, how you interact with people in a group with your own actions, and also how you interact with people and the self. So you're going to have your law, you're going to have people one-on-one, you're going to have group setting. You're also going to have how you are in relativity to others, and that's your self-value. So that's your law, your personal boundary, and your fourth ethic. That's when you learn self-control. Your 5th ethic is when you learn accountability. That is when you learn, again, your self-authority with your power of choice, but this time you are taking it and applying it into action. You could say that self-management, the first 3 groups, is actually theory, whereas the second group, social management, is about application or doing. The third is verbal, and the fourth is energy. So when you're in social management and you're doing self-law, self-control. You are looking at your personal boundaries. 5th ethic, you're looking at accountability. You are exercising your power of action. You are already got your power of choice. Now you're doing power of action, and you're putting it into application, and you're realizing that you require the ability of hindsight or foresight so that you don't cause harm to others. This is when you learn foresight. Because prior to this point, you have hindsight. You have to learn accountability to gain foresight. Then with foresight, you go into the 6th ethic, which is self-value. This is when you learn and how to apply self-regulation with self-management into that second grouping, social management, with equal footing. It's understanding that you can assert yourself without harming others, so you have that balance. The equal footing, that 6th ethic, is all about finding equilibrium and balance. But in order to do that, you need to make sure that you give yourself the assertiveness and the voice you need in ratio to listening to others. And it's that back and forth regulated balance again, where you take that self-regulation and you apply it now not to self-regulation, but to social regulation. So now the third ethics, the third group of the ethics, that's going to be your seventh, eighth, ninth ethic. And this is where we get into humble submission. This is where you are open to receive. You got that second ethic again, where you're practicing the second ethic, where you're going to listen, humble submission, and you are listening to receive. You are in the learning mindset. But then you move into the eighth ethic, which is all about asserting yourself again. So it's observation. We're back to asserting yourself. But this time you're not going to be asserting with action. You're going to be asserting with your voice. All about you talking. It's all about you getting your voice opened up to say what it is you need to say. Now, in the eighth ethic, you're going to say something that makes you sound like an asshole. And when you do that, you're going to realize, oh my God, my words also have accountability that I need to take action for and make sure that I reel that in. So at the end of the eighth ethic, you reel that in into the ninth ethic and you start to self-regulate listening with talking. And that's really all you're doing. It's reception and transmission. Now you are getting into power economics. Now you're getting into emotional transactions with human connection. Now you are looking at how we actually interact with each other. Now, by this point, you should have a stable AIDNS. That is your abstract, interdimensional, navigational system, or your prosthetic subconscious mind. And it should be interacting properly with other people so that when you come together at the seventh, eighth, and ninth ethic, you know how to preserve equal footing at the sixth so that you can start making a connection with reception, transmission, asserting yourself, and then you've got this gorgeous little power economics trade thing happening with networking. Now you can start getting into trade, but this is now seventh, eighth, ninth ethic. At the ninth ethic, you've learned hindsight and you are now asserting accountability prior to you causing any damage. So it's like the opposite of accountability at that ninth ethic. That opens up energy management. Energy management is what we get when we have emotional fluidity. And it's also what we get when we have logical navigation. Now, at the 12th ethic, you're going to integrate the both of them to regulate your emotional navigation. That way, your logic navigates your emotions. Now, your emotions drive everything. So if you suppress your emotions, it's like draining the gas out of your car, people. So you really don't want to drain your emotions. You don't want to suppress your emotions because your emotions is the car gasoline. You're going to need those emotions to fuel your gas, to steer it. Now, the steering is the logic. That's why you need logic, is so that when your emotions come through, you can use logical navigation. We call this strategic deliberation, so that you can use logic to navigate and move and steer your car wherever it is needs to go. But if you don't have emotional fluidity, then you're just going to sit there in a parked car moving the steering wheel without ever actually going anywhere. It is your drive and it is your momentum. So your emotional energy is your drive and your momentum. Collect that with the second ethic, which is your self-authority. And now you're using power of choice with your right to reject. So you can absolutely propel your car forward with that logical navigation that allows it to steer. Now you throw in there something along the lines of your ninth ethic, where you are now consciously aware of what your actions do to others while exercising foresight, hindsight. That way, foresight. That way, you don't run into anything, because you're implementing all of the ethics, and this is how they integrate together. So when you get to that 12 ethics, you are integrating all 12 ethics at the same time so you can drive your life forward with the right momentum, with the right energy, keeping you safe. Now, then when this all comes together, you have forgiveness. Forgiveness is the 12-step program of you reverse engineering all 12 ethics accordingly so that you can undo any damage done and or someone else does to you safely. Reverse engineering is the undoing and or the disintegration of integration. So that when you are harmed or you go down the wrong logical code, you need to disintegrate and disassemble it, which is reverse engineering. Whenever you go through the 12 ethics, whenever you make any kind of a decision, you are building an integrated logical line of code. When you mess up your code, you make a wrong decision, you have built the wrong logical code. You need to disassemble it and then reassemble it. The disassembly of the logical code is forgiveness and is the 12 ethical stages in reverse. So you're going to want to start with that 12 ethics. First, you're going to say, oh, where did I go wrong? There's that accountability again, where you're going to step back and you're just going to say, I need to forgive, as in I need to consciously go through the process. Did you logically use strategic deliberation to navigate this decision? Probably not. That's why you got hurt. Look at the 11th. Did you use logic accordingly? Yes, I used logic. You're great. Let's now look at the 10th. Actually, no, you didn't. If you did, then you wouldn't have gotten hurt. 10th ethic, emotional fluidity. Did you ignore your emotions by any chance? Because if you you ignored your emotions, that's absolutely not going to get you where you need to get to. And it probably was displaced emotions. And as a result, you didn't listen to the message received from your subconscious mind. And as a result, you got hurt. So you need to take accountability and go, yep, I totally ignored the red flags. Yeah, probably. Ninth ethic. Ninth ethic is usually that part. It is that part when you are not using hindsight to assess your own accountability for your actions, which is why it led you to the problem to begin with. Looking at that eighth ethic, you are looking at, were you using the right words? This is a really big question. Were you using the right words to articulate what you need to say? Now, if you didn't, were you making yourself clearer? You know that that's something you need to work on. The moral of the story is learn. Seventh ethic, ironically, that's learning. It's the, I'm going to sit back, observe the situation, assess, and reevaluate. By the way, these are scientific method. When you sit down and you go through this process, you're going to see precisely where you should have made the adjustments and the decisions differently. Learn from it, observe and assess quietly. That's what the seventh ethic is all about. You move into that sixth ethic. Did you, by any chance, violate equal footing? Were you making decisions from a disadvantage? Or were you making decisions from a disadvantage? Or were you making decisions from equal footing? Now, you should only ever be making decisions from equal footing. If you are not making decisions from equal footing, you should not be making decisions with that person at all, because now what you are doing is entering into a human connection with someone without consent. That's rape, people. We don't do that. So you should not, under any circumstance, be allowing a connection, be permitting a connection, if you are not on equal footing. If you are at a disadvantage and you are choosing to connect with someone, you will always be at a disadvantage. It means that you are in self-preservation mode, which means you are thinking about fear. You are thinking about survival. That is now tampered with decision-making. You are not of sound mind and body if you are at the disadvantage, because you are at the disadvantage. It's a lose-lose for you, which is why you should never agree or consent to enter into any kind of an arrangement with anyone who you are not on equal footing with. And if you had the upper hand, well, you're just an asshole now, aren't you? Upper hand decision-making is abuse. That's why it's abusive. It's because they are calling the shots with the upper hand. By the way, this is what narcissism is. This is exactly what narcissism is. They compromise and they go for that upper hand and they make all decisions from the upper hand at everybody else's expense. So knowing that, oh, there you go, there it is right there, equal footing. Do not consent if it's not on equal footing. Do not make a decision with somebody unless you are at equal footing without and with the disadvantage. You want to make sure that it's equal. And then you look at that fifth. This is where it's right down to that accountability. Are you taking accountability for the fact that you violated your fourth ethic? Because you violated your fourth ethic. If you had not violated your fourth ethic, none of this would have happened. So now let's go look at the fourth ethic. The fourth ethic is your boundaries. It is your ability to assess what code or what law you needed to take care of you, which means either you A, don't have boundaries defined, or B, they are not good boundaries. You need to go back and reassess these. This is where all the work actually takes place. Now, everything prior to this point, from the 12th all the way down to the 4th, that's all the prep work to get you right here. This is really where you need to go. But you're not going to just be able to get here, because this is the learning process. You need to disintegrate. You need to break this down and figure out, where did the problem go wrong? It went wrong between steps 12 and 5. 4 is really what needs to be adjusted. But in order to assess 4, in order to fix 4, you need to know what the problem was between 5 and 12. So 12 to 5 allows you to assess which of these 4 ethics you need to assess, which of this code you need to figure out. You then readjust the code. That is your boundary setting. After you have redefined and upgraded or amended your code, you need to go back into the third ethic, which is self-regulation, because now you really need some self-care, people. At the third ethic, that's when you realize, okay, now I need to go take care of my needs and my desires. Now you're self-regulating. Now you want to slide on over into self-authority. You need to show yourself that you have power of choice, that you have the right to reject, because most likely the sixth ethic was violated, which means you need to go back to the second ethic and make sure that you can choose. Again, this is what everybody misses. And as a result, a lot of people don't feel like they have control or power, is because of the self-authority. Because you had the equal footing violated. You did not have the fourth ethic, which is why that sixth ethic got violated. Now you need to go back to the second ethic to make sure your self-authority is in place. Power of choice, right to reject. So it's a question of what do you want? Because go do it. What do you want? What do you want? Now, before you go into the whole what do I want, ask yourself, what do I need? And this is where your self-nourishment with that first ethic comes in. And now you've got to regulate. Where are your needs and where are your wants? You need to make sure you do what you want. You need to make sure that you do what you need. And you need to make sure you prioritize those two things, which is self-regulation. Now, once you have your needs taken care of and your wants taken care of, you can regulate again. And then you can get back in the game, make sure that your fourth ethics are right where they need to be so that you have your boundaries, which allows you to be accountable once more so you can get right back into the equal footing playing game and have fun, which allows you to observe, learn, assess, go right through it again with your ability to communicate and assert yourself. Hopefully this time you're doing it the right way. That way you get emotional transaction with human connection the right way. That way you can have emotional fluidity without anyone getting hurt because you're using logical navigation, which brings you to self-love. And those are the 12 ethics. Thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.